Congratulations to each of you. Judge Merriweather, you've been nominated to the Court of Federal Claims, is that right?
Yes, Senator.
How many motions have you argued in the Court of Federal Claims?
I have argued hundreds of motions involving complex civil claims in numerous courts. The Court of Federal Claims is not one of those courts.
Okay, so the answer is 0?
That is correct, Senator.
Okay. How many cases have you tried in the Court of Federal Claims?
I have tried a civil case in the district court for the District of Columbia. Most of my cases have been resolved on motions. None of those cases have been in the Court of Federal Claims, although they involve similarly complex matters under civil laws.
So the answer is 0?
That is correct, Senator.
What is the, tell me the grounds for granting a new trial in the Court of Federal Claims?
All of the trials in the Court of Federal Claims are bench trials, and the Court of Federal Claims, although it is not bound by the federal rules of civil procedure, its rules mirror those rules when applicable. So it's my understanding that the same rules that would apply in the district court are also applied in that context. But if I were presented with a motion for a new trial, should I be confirmed as a judge on the Court of Federal Claims, I would, of course, consult the rules of court of the Court of Federal Claims.
So what are the grounds for granting a new trial?
My understanding is that a new trial, you would have to comply with the applicable rules.
I know that, but what are they? What are the grounds? You said that the rules are identical to the Court of Federal Claims and Federal District Court. I'm not sure that's accurate, but just tell me what are the grounds for granting a new trial in the Court of Federal Claims?
Senator, that is not an issue I have had occasion to consider before, despite my extensive civil experience and my familiarity, not only with the federal rules of civil procedure, but I've also reviewed the rules of the Court of Federal Claims. But if I were presented...
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead. Were you through?
I did not mean to speak over you.
That's okay. You go ahead, and I want you to finish your answer.
So I would, if I were presented with that question, should I be confirmed, I would, again, consult the rules and follow the precedent.
Okay. All right. Let me be sure, Judge, I understand your testimony. Can you tell me one single ground for granting a new trial in either a federal district court or the Court of Federal Claims as we sit here today?
Yes, if you misapplied, if there were gross misapplication of the law, certainly a litigant would argue for
anything
a
else?
Trial.
There are like 6 or 7 of them. Can you tell me any others?
Trials are so infrequent in the civil context, and although I have presided over bench trials and a jury trial, I have not been presented with a motion to have a new trial.
Okay.
So I've not.
Okay. What's a contract of adhesion?
A contract.
Excuse me.
Senator, I'm familiar with contract law, the concept of contracts of adhesion.
Yeah, you're going to say a lot of that. That's what Court of Federal Claims does. What's a contract of adhesion?
Senator, the Court of Federal Claims does handle a lot of procurement cases. Those typically turn on interpretations.
Yes, ma'am, but I'm going to run out of time. What's a contract of adhesion? If you don't know, just tell me.
Senator, despite my extensive civil experience, including dozens of cases that include contract cases, I have not dealt with the question of what a contract of adhesion is, but should it be presented to me,
Sure.
I would.
You'll look it up. Okay. Do you remember? Congratulations to all of you. Judge Dubose, am I saying your name right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be direct. I think most of my questions are designed to be yes or no. Are you still a Marxist?
Thank you for the question, Senator.
You don't have to thank me. We'll say you are welcome.
I am not, nor have ever been a Marxist.
Well, you gave an interview in 2000 to the feminist press. In fact, you didn't turn it over to us. We had to ask for it. We found it on our own. And you did then turn it over to us. And this is what you were describing your time working in a coffee shop. You said, quote, the kids would come into the cafe all the time. We'd talk about what they're doing. We'd talk about their classes. And I was in my Marxist phase. So you used to be a Marxist, but you're not now?
No, Senator, if I may, the context of the first of that interview, I had no idea that that interview was something that was going to be published. I did an interview with it
Did you mean what you said, whether it was published or not, or whether we'd find it? Trying to understand what you believe. You said I was in my Marxist phase.
Thank you, Senator.
Still in your Marxist phase, or was that in the past?
No, Senator, if I may explain.
Sure.
I was a political science major. When I graduated from college, I immersed myself in a ton of political theory. I read Hobbes, I read Locke, I read Rousseau, I read Marx. I went through a phase where I was into Eastern religion, where I read the Tao Te Ching, the Analects of Confucius. So I suspect, and I don't know that that quote with the article, I don't know if she was referring to what I was studying at the time, but as a political science major and as a theorist and someone who was considering teaching a course in political theory, I immersed myself in those
but
things.
She didn't refer to anything. She, meaning, I assume you're referring to the reporter who interviewed. These are your words, and you didn't say I'm in my Hobbes phase. You didn't say, second, I'm in my Locke phase. I mean, you didn't say I'm in my Rousseau phase. You said I was in my Marxist phase, and my question is real simple. Are you still a Marxist?
Senator, I've never been a Marxist, and I'm not a Marxist today.
Okay. All right. Have you ever served as lead counsel in a federal bench trial?
No, Senator. With my experience as both a state prosecutor, as an in-house counsel at Schneider Electric, doing very complex compliance and regulatory work, and my work as a district court sitting judge, handling general jurisdiction.
Yes, ma'am. I've read your resume. I just want to get through these questions. Have you ever served as lead counsel in a federal jury trial?
No, Senator, I have not.
Okay. Have you ever attended a federal jury trial and watched
Senator.
it live?
No. No, Senator.
Have you ever watched a federal jury trial on TV?
I don't believe that federal trials are televised, so no, I have not, Senator.
Have you ever watched any trial on television?
Senator, I handle and preside over trials every single day as a state district court judge. We follow the rules of evidence, criminal procedure, civil procedure. So I feel that with my experience, that I am well suited and capable to make the transition from our state district court to our U.S. District Court.
Okay. When you were practicing law, did you ever draft a motion or a brief applying the federal rules of evidence?
No, Senator. As a state prosecutor...
I'm sorry, you said what?
I said no, Senator.
No, okay. When you were practicing law, did you ever draft a motion or a brief applying the federal rules of civil procedure?
Well, I believe that there were times at Schneider Electric giving advice to business units regarding the federal acquisition regulations, that I would draft briefs to give them counsel as to how to be compliant with the federal rules. So in that respect, the answer would be yes.
Okay. What's an interpleader action?
Interpleader action is a third party who's going to intervene in a civil suit. They're not a primary party.
Okay. What's voir dire?
Voir dire is the process with which jurors are questioned by the state and by defense and prosecutors to serve on a
Have
panel.
you ever conducted a voir dire in federal court?
Not in federal court.
Okay. I'm going to yield back 6 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse.
Just to clarify the record, Judge Dubose, do you recall when that interview was done, the interview that Senator Kennedy referred to?
No, Senator, I don't. And if I recall, and I was brought to my attention yesterday, that was never an interview that I did I thought was going to be published. I never reviewed it. I didn't. It was an undergrad student who was interested in teaching, who spent 20 minutes.
What were you doing at the time?
I was teaching.
So this was before you even went to law school. This was
Yeah, I was
many,
really
many,
early.
many, many, many years ago.
It was, Senator.
Perhaps during the time when my colleague Senator Kennedy was a Democrat. Showing that people can change their views, even if it were true that you were then in a Marxist phase.
Senator Graham?
Mr. Chairman, my name was invoked.
I noticed.
As a proud Democrat, we were like
My
that part of
name
your
was
history.
invoked, Mr. Chairman. Now, I just want to let the record reflect, and I love Senator Whitehouse.
Uh-oh.
But I'll tell you one thing, I've never been a Marxist. I've never been a Marxist. And I've never admitted I was a Marxist and then not turned the document over to this committee. We had to find it. And we did. And now your testimony, the testimony under oath today is, I didn't say that. The reporter said that. No, the witness said that. And then the testimony is, well, I didn't mean it to become public. That's not the issue. So, you know, if we won't get personal here, we can.
Senator Graham?
Thank you. Let's agree on the following. A Louisiana Democrat's probably not a Marxist. But the bottom line is, why wasn't it available to the committee, Mr. Bell?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I had no idea that the article existed. When I did the interview with that undergrad student, it was for a paper for a class.
It's something you didn't know about.
I was in an interview with a young lady who was interested in teaching as an undergrad, and I was just sharing my transition, how I went to be into teaching.
I understand. Your testimony is, this is not something I've seen before. Had you seen it before?
No, Senator.
Okay, so if you hadn't seen it, you didn't know about it, so that's why you didn't turn it over.
That's correct.
Okay, just make sure of that. Mr. Ali, is that right?
Yes, Senator.
You were head of the MacArthur or Associated MacArthur Justice Center, is that correct?
Thank you, Senator Butler. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Coggins, you used to work for Governor Jerry Brown,
That is correct, Senator.
and I believe you advised him on issues regarding parole.
As the governor under the California Constitution, when the parole board recommends that a inmate be paroled, that matter then comes before the governor to determine whether he's going to reverse that recommendation.
Did you
Or
advise him on parole?
I was not advising him. What I provided was a background, all background information. So the nature and circumstances of the particular case that was before us. I was looking at the correctional file. In addition, I was
Do you
reviewing.
remember a parolee named James Schoenfeld?
I don't, Senator.
Okay. You talked a lot about, as did you all appropriately, about juveniles in your testimony. Governor Brown in 2015 paroled Mr. James Schoenfeld. He was convicted of kidnapping 26 kids, juveniles, and burying them alive. Were you with Governor Brown then?
I left in 2015, so I'm unsure of the time period in which that occurred.
This happened in 2015.
That name is not familiar to me. What I can say is those decisions
Do you
are.
remember the case?
I do not.
Okay. When it happened, it got a lot of publicity in California. Did you call Judge Brown or Governor Brown and say, Governor, I love you, but what planet did you just parachute in from? Why have you done this?
I did not.
Do you agree with this decision?
I would need to look at the file. I don't know the context. I don't know the background, the insight. And the decision that Governor Brown would make is whether the parolee is poses an unreasonable risk to the safety of the community. And
Do you think kidnapping 26 juveniles and burying them alive presents a risk to the community?
I certainly believe that if that individual is convicted of those crimes, which it sounds like he was,
yeah.
he would be a risk to the community.
But you don't have an opinion about whether Governor Brown did the right thing?
Again, Senator, I would have to be able to look at the complete file and all of the considerations required of the governor, who ultimately makes the decision.
So he might have done the right thing, in your opinion?
I would want to look at the complete file in order to make an assessment.
All right, Judge.
Assessment.
All right, Judge Bosara. Do you remember a case called J&J Sports Products v. If I mispronounce it, sir, please correct me. Ferraris?
I do recall that case, Senator, yes.
Okay, it was pretty recent, 2020. You're a magistrate judge, right?
I am.
And your decisions have to be reviewed by a federal district court judge?
That's correct.
Okay. You made a ruling in that case, and the district court reversed you.
In part, yes.
And the district court said, quote, these are the judge's words, not mine, that you ignored, quote, a large collection of cases in this district holding that essentially identical allegations are sufficient to state a claim. So your boss said you just ignored a whole line of cases. What's going on here?
Well, Senator Kennedy, the way I recall that case was there's a split in authority about claims that can be brought under the Copyright Act. And there were, in addition to the cases that the district judge cited, there was a whole bevy of other cases going in the other direction. And the Court of Appeals had not ruled on it.
Yeah.
And
but the judge didn't say you looked at both line of cases and decided one was more accurate than the other. He said you totally ignored a line of cases. Did you just disagree with those line of cases?
Senator, I would never ignore a whole line of cases, and I know that was a very lengthy opinion that I issued, and it's my practice in the 1,000 opinions.
I'm going to run out of time. I'm sorry to cut you off, Judge. I don't mean any disrespect. The district court judge says you ignored those cases.
I would respectfully say, as I don't...
Was he wrong?
I'm not going to call a colleague wrong, but I can say that in every case where I write a lengthy opinion, I read all of the applicable authorities. And I know in that particular situation, there's a line of other cases that I have read, and I did so in all of my decisions, and I can expect that I did so in that one as well.
But why did you ignore the line of cases is my point. I can understand you saying, well, there are two line of cases and they conflict, and I find the reasoning more persuasive in this line. The district judge reversed you, said you just totally ignored them. That worries me.
He reversed me only in part, Senator, and in those line of cases, I think there's a split of authority at the district court level. There's no governing Court of Appeals decision or a U.S. Supreme Court decision, which my oath requires me to follow.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you and your friends and family.
Judge, welcome.
Thank you.
You are probably the least productive member of your district court, isn't that right?
Well, I have not considered myself in those terms, Senator.
Well, let me explain what I mean. You have 125 motions pending that you've declined to decide.
Let
me finish. That's more than any other district judge in the entire Seventh Circuit. In fact, you rank 7th highest nationally, do you not?
I am not familiar with those statistics, Senator Kennedy.
You haven't looked?
I did look in preparation for this hearing, but I didn't compare myself to others.
You haven't seen that you ranked the 7th, the worst in the country in terms of making decisions?
You are the first to tell me this. And I think for me, I stress the quality of my decision making. And as I explained, I came on, I was the first district judge to come on during this administration.
Yeah, but so were all the others. I mean, there have been 68 district judges confirmed in the 117th Congress. In terms of motions pending for more than 6 months, you rank number 3. You all came on at the same time. You all had the same problems with COVID. You're the third worst. You really think of all the other district judges in the Seventh Circuit, you're the one that ought to be promoted based on this record?
Senator, this is something that I've discussed with my fellow judges. Many of us new judges from...
I thought you said you'd never looked at these statistics.
I haven't, these particular statistics I am not familiar with. But in terms of new judges, both from the current administration and the former administration, we are quite a collegial bunch, and oftentimes talk about the pressures of a new judge and the way reassignments work in our district, which is that you get, for example, 300 cases.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I'm familiar with the procedure in federal court. Here's what I'm trying to understand. Why is your record so bad?
Well, I don't view it that way, Senator. When I look at the quality of my decision-making, the feedback that I get from parties,
Of course parties are not going to criticize you. They want you to rule in their favor.
I understand, Senator Kennedy.
I mean, that's just the way it works. Help me understand why you have such an abysmal record in moving cases. I mean, it costs a lot of money to litigate, and people are paying lawyers, and time is money. And of all the district court judges in the Seventh Circuit, you're the worst in terms of moving cases. Why do you think you deserve to be promoted over all of those others?
So, Senator, again, I'm not familiar with the statistics, but I stand by my record and that I give parties what they need. I think, I am regularly in my courtroom. I am regularly issuing decisions. I just came on at a very difficult time where there was a backlog in the courts.
So did everybody else. Let me ask you, when you were a partner in your law firm, you volunteered to write a brief on behalf of the Brady Center. You wrote the brief, and this is what you said. You volunteered for this. You weren't being paid. Is that right?
This was a pro bono case that one of my partners brought in, yes.
You said, quote, assault weapons may be banned because they're extraordinarily dangerous and are not appropriate for legitimate self-defense purposes, close quote. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Just to clarify there, I was local counsel. Our Supreme...
but you wrote the brief. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Senator Kennedy, actually, I did not write the brief. The brief was written by...
You signed the brief, though, didn't you?
Correct. I signed the brief.
When you sign a brief, you're testifying to the court that everything in it is true, right?
Yes.
Okay. So they're your words in terms of the court, right?
Well, you're correct, Senator Kennedy. Okay. I would never sign...
Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
So I am not a gun expert, and at the time, that brief, I think, was about 10 years...
But you were giving the court advice about, say, ban assault weapons. What is... You told the court you were an expert. Just tell me what you wanted to ban.
Senator, sitting here today, as I said, I did not write that brief. I was local counsel.
Sign the brief.
I understand. At the time...
Tell me what you wanted to ban. That's all I want to know, Judge.
I don't remember the exact definition of assault weapons in the ordinance that was at issue.
So you submitted a brief to an appellate brief, you signed it, and you don't know what, and you said abolish assault weapons, and you don't know what you wanted them to abolish?
Senator, at the time that I signed the brief, I read the brief because our Supreme Court required an Illinois bar member to sign the brief. I was not responsible for researching the content.
You were responsible for the brief.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sitting here today, I do not remember the characteristics of that were cited in the ordinance for the assault weapons ban. It's not an area of practice that I have specialized in. I'm sure 10 years ago I could have answered your question.
And
but
Judge,
sitting here today,
you think
Senator,
you deserve
your
to be
time has
promoted with this record?
Senator, I stand by my record. I stand by my record.
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to you and your...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you. Judge Martinez, tell me about state police power.
Senator, my understanding of state police power is the authority of the state officials to enforce state law.
Well, what if the state law is in violation of federal law?
Well, we have the Supremacy Clause under Article 6 of the Constitution that provides that federal law is the supreme law of the land.
Yeah, but that's not an exercise of state power. What's the origin of states' police power?
My understanding, Senator, is also from Article 1 of the Constitution, where the Congress was enumerated certain powers, and under one of the provisions of Article 1, anything that was not specifically enumerated.
You don't think it's Article 10?
Well, Article 10 has to also is also applicable.
Actually, the 10th Amendment. What does the 10th Amendment say?
The 10th Amendment provides that any specific power that was not given to a Congress or denied to the states applies to the states and the people.
And that's the origin of a state's police power, right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, it's not Article 1.
I read it as both, Senator, but if it's Amendment 10, then it's Amendment 10, Senator.
Does the federal government have police power?
The federal government has authority to enforce its federal law.
Yes, ma'am. But we've talked about the state's police power. Does the federal government have police power?
Well, the executive branch has the power to enforce the law executed by the legislature.
Well, but the federal government can't. The Constitution's pretty clear that you have to have an enumerated power in the Constitution, right, in order to be able to do something?
Well, it's my understanding, Senator, there are enumerated powers, but there are also implied powers in the Constitution.
Yeah, but those are implied to be enumerated. There is no federal police power, is there?
Well, Senator, my understanding is that the executive branch has the power to execute the laws of the United States.
I know, but that has nothing to do with police power. Let me move on. Counselor, tell me how to say your last name.
Suknanan, Senator.
Say it again, please, ma'am.
Suknanan.
Suknan?
Suknanan.
Suknanan, okay. Counselor, you used to practice law at Jones Day, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. And there was an article in the New York Times. I don't know whether you leaked it to them or somebody from your law firm leaked it to them. Your firm, Jones Day, you were a partner then, and you were representing a party, your firm was, and you were, in a post-election challenge to Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, of course, extended the filing deadline for absentee ballots in the presidential election, and that was challenged as being unconstitutional under both the state and the federal constitution. Am I right?
Yes, Senator.
And Jones Day was handling that case, right?
That's correct.
And you were a partner at Jones Day, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. And who was your client in that case?
The firm's client was the Pennsylvania GOP, Senator.
Well, it's your client too, right?
Correct, Senator. I was not the lawyer in that case, but yes, Senator.
But you were going to share in the profits made from the bills paid by the Pennsylvania GOP, right?
Senator, it was a firm client. I was a partner at the firm.
And you were going to share in the money, right?
Correct, Senator.
Okay. And in a call where you and some of your partners were talking about the case, this is what you said about your client who's paying you. You said, this is according to an August 25, 2022 article. You said, quote, "This lawsuit was brought for no other reason than to deprive poor people of the right to vote," close quote. You said that, didn't you?
Senator, those were not my words. I do not know who provided that quote to the reporter. You
gave it to the reporter, didn't you?
Senator, I never spoke to the reporter or anyone in the media about the meeting in question, and I'll tell you why. As a partner at Jones Day, all partners are bound by a confidentiality obligation to the firm. And that meeting was an internal, confidential partners meeting.
Yeah,
I never spoke to the media about it, and those were not my words, Senator.
This is a violation of about 927 provisions of the Code of Ethics, isn't it?
Senator, that's why I never spoke to that reporter, and those were not my words. I do not know who provided that quote to the reporter.
What did you mean? Who was trying to deprive poor people of the right to vote? Who were you referring to when you said that?
Senator, as I said, those were not my words.
Oh, you never said that. You denied.
Senator, those were not my words.
If we deposed your partners on that call, they would say, no, she never said it.
Senator, I am telling you here today under oath that those were not my words. I never spoke to them.
If we deposed your partners and put them under oath, they would say, no, she never said that?
Senator, I can't tell you what someone else would say under oath. I can tell you under oath that those were not my words. I never spoke to the media about that call.
And you think in light of this, you're qualified to be a federal judge?
Senator, I never spoke to the media.
You would say that about a client?
Senator, as I said, those were not my words, and I never spoke to the media about the meeting in question. I take my obligations, ethical and otherwise, incredibly seriously.
You said that, didn't you?
Senator, I did not say those words.
So the New York Times got it wrong?
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you. Judge Martinez, tell me about state police power.
Senator, my understanding of state police power is the authority of the state officials to enforce state law.
Well, what if the state law is in violation of federal law?
Well, we have the Supremacy Clause under Article 6 of the Constitution that provides that federal law is the supreme law of the land.
Yeah, but that's not an exercise of state power. What's the origin of state's police power?
My understanding, Senator, is also from Article 1 of the Constitution, where the Congress was enumerated certain powers, and under one of the provisions of Article 1, anything that was not specifically enumerated.
You don't think it's Article 10?
Well, Article 10 has to also is also applicable.
Actually, the 10th Amendment. What does the 10th Amendment say?
The 10th Amendment provides that any specific power that was not given to a Congress or denied to the states applies to the states and the people.
And that's the origin of a state's police power, right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, it's not Article 1.
I read it as both, Senator, but if it's Amendment 10, then it's Amendment 10, Senator.
Does the federal government have police power?
The federal government has authority to enforce its federal law.
Yes, ma'am. But we've talked about the state's police power. Does the federal government have police power?
Well, the executive branch has the power to enforce the law executed by the legislature.
Well, but the federal government can't. The Constitution's pretty clear that you have to have an enumerated power in the Constitution, right, in order to be able to do something?
Well, it's my understanding, Senator, there are enumerated powers, but there are also implied powers in the Constitution.
Yeah, but those are implied to be enumerated. There is no federal police power, is there?
Well, Senator, my understanding is that the executive branch has the power to execute the laws of the United States.
I know, but that has nothing to do with police power. Let me move on. Judge, let me ask you, when you were a partner in your law firm, you volunteered to write a brief on behalf of the Brady Center. You wrote the brief, and this is what you said. You volunteered for this. You weren't being paid. Is that right?
This was a pro bono case that one of my partners brought in, yes.
You said, quote, assault weapons may be banned because they're extraordinarily dangerous and are not appropriate for legitimate self-defense purposes, close quote. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Just to clarify there, I was local counsel. Our Supreme...
Yeah, but you wrote the brief. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Senator Kennedy, actually, I did not write the brief. The brief was written by...
You signed the brief, though, didn't you?
Correct. I signed the brief.
When you sign a brief, you're testifying to the court that everything in it is true, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
they're your words in terms of the court, right?
Well, you're correct, Senator Kennedy.
Okay.
I would never
Tell
sign...
me what you meant by assault weapons.
So I am not a gun expert, and at the time, that brief, I think, was about 10 years...
But you were giving the court advice about, say, ban assault weapons. What is... You told the court you were an expert. Just tell me what you wanted to ban.
Senator, sitting here today, as I said, I did not write that brief. I was local counsel.
Sign the brief.
I understand. At the time...
Tell me what you wanted to ban. That's all I want to know, Judge.
I don't remember the exact definition of assault weapons in the ordinance that was at issue.
So you submitted a brief to an appellate brief, you signed it, and you don't know what, and you said abolish assault weapons, and you don't know what you wanted them to abolish?
Senator, at the time that I signed the brief, I read the brief because our Supreme Court required an Illinois bar member to sign the brief. I was not responsible for researching the content.
You were responsible for the brief.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sitting here today, I do not remember the characteristics of that were cited in the ordinance for the assault weapons ban. It's not an area of practice that I have specialized in. I'm sure 10 years ago I could have answered your question. But
Judge,
sitting here today,
you think you deserve to be promoted? With this record?
Senator, I stand by my record. I stand by my record.
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to you and your...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ritz, you are a political activist, aren't you?
I would not consider myself that at all, Senator.
Okay. When you were sworn in as U.S. Attorney, you gave a speech, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. Here's what you said. I want to quote from your speech. But you should know that justice for me is about more than putting people in prison. For me, it's also about who votes and how hard it is to cast that vote. It's about where pipelines go. It's about where bus routes go. Justice is about whether people in all zip codes can get along, whether women have access to health care, whether citizens have affordable housing or clean drinking water. Sometimes those are Department of Justice issues. Sometimes they are not. But for me, they're all justice issues. Did I read that accurately?
I believe so, Senator.
Okay. Did you really remove the Tennessee state flag from your conference room?
Senator, I appreciate you asking about this again. As the chief federal law enforcement...
Welcome. Did you do it?
So I felt it was fundamentally inappropriate when I gave press conferences and similar statements to the public to indicate or suggest somehow that I spoke for the state, which I don't under our system of federalism.
Are you embarrassed to be from Tennessee?
Not at all, Senator. I am from Tennessee, grew up as a public school kid in Tennessee.
But you were embarrassed to have the Tennessee flag.
That's not it at all, Senator.
Okay. You have a history of lying to your professional colleagues, don't you?
That's not true, Senator.
Okay. Do you know a former public defender named Stephen Shankman?
I knew him to a degree. I'm not sure we ever had any cases together. I knew who he was, yes.
Well, in a private email, not meant for public consumption, to another one of your professional colleagues, this is what Mr. Shankman said, talking about your lying. He said, "It is unfortunate that this is not the first, second, third, or whatever occasion that this sort of thing has occurred. But everyone should be aware of this unfortunate pattern of behavior. You should be aware," he said to the other lawyer, before the other lawyer dealt with you. "Your client should be aware, and you should proceed with extreme caution." Was Mr. Shankman lying?
To the degree he suggested that I acted unethically, that was not accurate, and it wasn't in any occasion, much less on numerous occasions.
Okay, let's talk about this case, United States v. Von Rico Weber, which you claim to not remember. But before I do that, a few seconds ago, you lied to Senator Hawley, didn't you?
I'm under oath, Senator. I did not lie.
You said you have no knowledge of any complaint, professional complaint made against you, didn't you?
I said I have no knowledge of any sort of formal complaint, and he read from a letter that I don't believe I ever saw.
And you were shocked. You
If
never heard of that before.
If there were a formal complaint, that, as I said, I had not known about that.
Okay. You were amazed.
I don't recall any of that.
Any.
I recall this Mr. Weber's
You have
case.
amnesia about it.
Again, I am unaware of any formal complaint or investigation. Certainly was not.
You believe in the Tooth Fairy?
Senator, I don't.
You believe in the Easter Bunny? Now, in this case, United States v. Von Rico Weber, you lied to the defense counsel. And the defense counsel then had to go before the court and withdraw a plea for his counsel. And a complaint was filed, about which you apparently have amnesia. And the Justice Department replaced you. And the lawyer from the Justice Department who replaced you, this is what the lawyer said. The new attorney said about you. Said these allegations against Mr. Ritz are, quote, serious. And it is taken so seriously, referring to the Department of Justice, by our office. That is one of the reasons I'm here, and Mr. Ritz will be more than likely be taken off this case because of those allegations. End quote. You lied to Senator Hawley, didn't you?
I didn't lie to the defense counsel in that case. I didn't lie today, Senator.
Now, my good friend Senator Ossoff asked you if you'd follow the law. And you said, yeah. But if you're lying to us today, we're stuck with you, aren't we?
Senator, I have not lied and did not lie in that case.
You just have amnesia.
I did not lie in that case. There was a written plea agreement with the entire agreement of the parties.
If you believe that, you believe Elvis is alive and running a small bait stand on Lake Erie. Shame on you.
Mr. Ritz, I asked our staff here who review all sorts of nominees' qualifications and backgrounds how it would be possible that someone could file a complaint against someone and they didn't know it. They said it is not uncommon at all for OPR to decide not to act on that letter of complaint. and not to proceed with it, and not even to notify the person accused.
That's my understanding as well, but again, yes.
We think that's a fact. So this notion about amnesia or whatever it may be, it is credible, at least possible, that exactly as you portrayed it, they never notified you. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Ritz, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all three of you. Judge Pinnell, you are a political activist, aren't you?
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. I am a judge on the Washington State Court of Appeals. I don't consider that to be a political activist.
Okay. In 2020, you and 10 of your friends issued a written statement. You entitled it, quote, Statement on Racism, White Supremacy, and Justice. Here's what you said. I'm quoting from you now. Racism and white supremacy currently plague every social, educational, economic, governmental, and legal system. Racism and white supremacy currently plague every social, educational, economic, governmental, and legal system in our state and in our nation. And they have for centuries. Both, you're referring to your state and America, both target Black, Indigenous, African American, Latinx, and other people and communities of color, resulting in entrenched inequality and inequity, manifesting in unjust, unfair, and differential treatment, and yielding remarkably disparate and negative outcomes relative to those experienced by white people. End quote. Did I read that accurately?
Senator, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have any reason to think that you did not read that correctly.
Okay. You are very active in Planned Parenthood, are you not?
No, Senator.
Okay. Well, Planned Parenthood, in its annual reports, lists you as a, quote, silver friend, close quote. Do you know what a silver friend means?
I don't, Senator.
That's someone who has donated between $1,000 and $2,500 to Planned Parenthood of Greater Washington and North Idaho. That's in the Planned Parenthood annual reports. You don't know anything about that?
I don't recall. What I recall, Senator, is that my husband had donated to Planned Parenthood, and I think at some point in time they listed me along with him, but I believe that was a donation.
This is you.
Okay.
And in fact, they say that as of 2018, you've been a donor for at least 10 consecutive years. Is that right?
I do not recall donating them for the last 10 consecutive, 10 years before 2018 or 10?
That's as of?
I don't recall, Senator.
Okay, you don't remember. Okay, let me ask you, you're on the Court of Appeal. Let me ask you about a few of your cases. Do you remember a case called State v. Westwood?
I believe so, Senator.
And you were reversed in that case, weren't you?
Senator, in reviewing my cases, I think I've been reversed in about 2% of the cases that I've issued. I've issued almost...
Were you reversed in that case, though?
That was a very complicated case regarding sentencing law.
But I'm going to run out of time, and I got a bunch of these.
Okay.
Were you reversed?
That might have been one of the 2% of the cases. I think
reversed?
so. I believe that was one of the 2% of cases,
You remember
Senator.
a case called Personal Restraint of Heirist?
That, I think, was the case regarding whether or not the person had been
Were you
deprived.
reversed in that case?
That was, I think I was not
Were you
reversed.
reversed in that case, counsel?
Senator, I think that I wasn't reversed as to outcome, but it was one of the 2% of the cases where the state Supreme Court
Do you
disagreed with the
remember a
analysis.
case called Parental Rights of ALK? Were you reversed in that case?
Senator, I think that was one of the 2% of my over 450 cases where there was a reversal.
Do you remember a case called State v. Log Bomb?
I recall that case, Senator. That case.
Were you reversed in that case?
That was one of the 2% of cases. I issued an opinion to affirm a conviction, and the state Supreme Court overruled that and
Remember
reversed.
a case called State v. Barboza v. Cortez? Were you reversed in that case?
Senator, that case is not coming to mind. Again, I've issued over, myself personally written over 450
Do you remember
decisions.
a case called State v. Telvik?
Senator, I think I recall that name. That might have been one of the 2% of
reversed
cases.
in that too?
That might have been one of the 2% of cases,
Okay.
Senator.
Another case, Hendrickson v. Moses Lake School. Were you reversed in that case?
Senator, I recall that case. I think that might have been one of the 2% of cases where the state Supreme Court disagreed with the analysis of another appellate court.
Were you
from that
reversed?
state.
You remember a case called State v. Curry? Were you reversed there?
Senator, I think you're reading off all the cases. I think that's one of the 2% of cases.
Okay. How about a case called State v. Rathbone? Were you reversed?
That's probably one of the 2%, Senator.
How about a case called Douglas v. Shamrock Paving Company?
Senator, that's a case where I was largely affirmed. The only thing that was a reversed, I included everything, even if it was just a partial reverse. The only thing that I was reversed on was an award of attorney fees. The substance of the law, which was rather new in that case regarding what constituted an investigation for an environmental
So
cleanup.
you weren't reversed?
That part of it I was affirmed.
Yeah, I think that would be a surprise to the Supreme Court that you weren't reversed.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
I'm out of time. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for
Senator.
your indulgence.
For the record, what is 2% of 450?
I think it's about 11 cases, if memory serves, 11 to 12 cases of the cases that I've written, many of which are grappling with really novel issues. And so that's what happens.
11 out of 450?
Over 450 that I've written myself.
Senators should be so lucky. Senator Booker?
I haven't been right 98.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Judge. I just want to talk a little bit about the law. Tell me about the war powers clauses in Articles 1 and 2.
Well, Senator, my understanding of the war powers is that the executive maintains significant authority with regard to the war, but that it has to be authorized by Congress.
What do you mean authorized?
Senator, I don't have a more, that issue has not come before me,
Sure.
But I don't have a more specific definition of authorization than that the Congress has to, it's up to the Congress to authorize it. I can't say more than that, Senator.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about another issue you'll see if you're confirmed with the 11th Circuit. It's an issue we struggle with every day, and as do the federal courts. Tell me about the non-delegation doctrine.
My understanding, Senator, of the non-delegation doctrine is that Congress should not delegate its powers to other branches of government except in certain limited circumstances.
And what are those limited circumstances?
I believe, based on my understanding, that Congress can, for instance, delegate some of its authority to the executive, such as executive agencies, if that authority is carefully circumscribed.
What? I'm not following you. The Constitution's pretty clear in Article 1 that the legislative power resides in the United States Congress, and we can't give it away. But your argument is that we can.
Senator, it's my understanding that in certain limited circumstances that are carefully circumscribed, that Congress can delegate some of its authority to.
Okay. What's the guiding principle, though? If we tomorrow, if Congress passed a law and said we're no longer going to confirm judges, we're going to set up a special agency within the executive branch and give that agency the authority to confirm judges. Somebody's going to litigate it. What would be the principle that the court would follow?
Senator, I would certainly, if that issue were to come before me on the 11th Circuit, if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, I would research the Supreme Court's precedent and guidance on that issue and any binding 11th Circuit precedent on the issue, if there is any, and address that issue. But in terms of the hypothetical situation, Senator, I would leave it at that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Let's set aside what the principle is for a moment. The Supreme Court has been pretty clear what the principle is. It goes back, I don't know, 80 years. But let's suppose, well, strike that. What I'm trying to understand is how you think, Judge. What do you think the principle ought to be? I mean, our founders were very clear that the legislative power is ours, and clearly we've given away that legislative power in some instances to some administrative agencies. What do you think the principle ought to be? Could the Congress just come in one week and said, we're tired, let's just give it all to the president for about 6 months while we go fishing? Would that be constitutional?
Well, certainly, Senator, I think to that extent would unlikely be constitutional based on...
Why do you think?
Based on the principle that I just stated, that and that you have reiterated, that...
Which is?
That Congress cannot delegate its authority except in certain circumstances.
And those are?
And those are ones that, Senator, I would not want to speculate about. I can say that I would follow the Supreme Court's guidance on that, and my understanding of that guidance is that those circumstances are very narrow.
Okay. But you're not familiar with the principle?
Senator, to the extent that you're looking for a specific articulation,
yes.
I would have to look at the case law and follow up on that.
Robert, do you have any questions you want me to ask your dad? You sure? Now's your shot, man. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us, Robert? It's okay. A wise man once said nothing.
I think he had a hello for you.
A wise man once said nothing. Thank you, Judge.
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Judge, on your...
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of you. Judge Saporito.
Yes.
You and Senator Casey went to high school together?
Yes, we did, Senator.
Did you ever see Senator Casey try to sneak a beer past Jesus in high school?
I never saw that, Senator.
Oh, okay. Wise answer. Judge Vaca, you are a member of an organization called the National Association Pacific American Bar Association, are you not?
I was, Senator. My membership lapsed at the beginning of this year, but I was a member for 2 years.
Well, my record shows you were a member for 22 years.
Senator, that was a mistake, and I actually sent a letter after I saw that mistake to the committee, so it was 2 years.
Okay. And the I'll call it the NAP-ABA. Is that the correct acronym?
I think NAPABA.
NAPABA?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And NAPABA is funded by Mr. George Soros, is it not?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the funding. I was a member and I paid the dues, but I had no contact with any of the members there, and so that's why I let my membership lapse.
Well, its website says that it's funded by the Open Society Foundations, which are founded by Mr. George Soros. Now, NAPABA in March of 2023, while you were still a member, NAPABA issued a statement, and it said that it supports allowing transgender and intersex girls and women to participate in all sports. Is that correct?
Senator, I'm not familiar with NAPABA's statement, so I'll take your word for it.
You didn't know anything about that?
No, Senator, I joined the organization because I thought it would give me a community of other Asian American attorneys and judges, but I didn't have any interaction with anyone in the group. I didn't attend any meetings or vote, and so I'm not aware of that statement or any of other statements made by NAPABA.
So this is all an epiphany to you. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. NAPABA also issued a statement that said the following. It supports state and local governmental entities that choose not to honor ICE detainer requests and that also decline to detain individuals solely on the basis of an ICE detainer request. So NAPABA opposes supporting ICE. Is that correct?
From what you just read, Senator, I guess I haven't read that statement, but I can tell you, Senator, that I don't ascribe to any of those statements that you just read to me.
Okay. Judge, in October of 2020, you ran for judge. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And on a talk radio interview, here's what you said. I'm going to quote.
Okay.
It's okay. We also need to recognize the effects of racism on our criminal justice system. Institutional racism impacts all of society. I think that is amplified in our criminal justice system. We see that in the disproportionate number of black men and women being incarcerated and convicted, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, I haven't listened to that particular show, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, okay. What do you think our criminal justice system is institutionally racist, do you?
Senator, I don't believe that our court system, by its nature, is racist.
Why did you say this then?
Well, what I meant by that was that I believe there are racial disparities in our communities.
Yeah, but that's not, we both know there's racism in every society, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But that's not what you said. You said the criminal justice system is not just racist, it's institutionally racist. And then you said that, I'm going to quote your words, not mine, the disproportionate number of black men and women incarcerated and convicted are because of race. Did you say that?
Senator, what I was talking about was the racial disparities in...
And you said it solely has to do with the color of a person's skin. You really believe that, Judge?
Well, no, Senator, I don't believe that at all.
Why did you say it? You said it, you were running for judge, you said it in front of God and country on a live.
What I said, Senator, was that I recognize that racial disparities in our community can influence
That's not what
rates
you
of
said.
incarceration.
That's not what you said. You're a political activist, aren't you, Judge?
No, not at all, Senator.
Okay, I'm over. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Senator Welch?
Thank you very much. Couple things. Judge Sapri.
Judge, in October of 2020, you ran for judge, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And on a talk radio interview, here's what you said. I'm going to quote.
Okay.
It's okay. We also need to recognize the effects of racism on our criminal justice system. Institutional racism impacts all of society. I think that is amplified in our criminal justice system. We see that in the disproportionate number of black men and women being incarcerated and convicted, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, I haven't listened to that particular show, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, okay. What do you think our criminal justice system is institutionally racist, do you?
Senator, I don't believe that our court system, by its nature, is racist.
Why did you say this then?
Well, what I meant by that was that I believe there are racial disparities in our communities.
Yeah, but that's not, we both know there's racism in every society, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what you said. You said the criminal justice system is not just racist, it's institutionally racist. And then you said that, I'm going to quote your words, not mine, the disproportionate number of black men and women incarcerated and convicted are because of race. Did you say that?
Senator, what I was talking about was the racial disparities in...
And you said it solely has to do with the color of a person's skin. You really believe that, Judge?
Well, no, Senator, I don't believe that at all.
Why did you say it? You said it, you were running for judge, you said it in front of God and country on a live.
What I said, Senator, was that I recognize that racial disparities in our community can influence rates of incarceration.
That's not what you said. You're a political activist, aren't you, Judge?
No, not at all, Senator.
Yeah. Okay, I'm over. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Senator Welch?
Thank you very much. Couple things. Judge Sapri.
Threatened
Thank
into... Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Senator Grassley.
You're welcome. I'll send you a bill.
Ms. Campbell, according to the AVVO, I don't know whether that's pronounced, I have a profile. It appears that you served as legal counsel to a group named Workers' Dignity. This group has taken a number of radical leftist positions. For example, Workers' Dignity has advocated for abolition of what they call oppressive systems like police and the military. Do you agree with this position? Do you support the abolition of police and military?
Senator, respectfully, I have never represented that organization, and I do not agree with that position.
Well, then I'm sorry that our research wasn't as accurate as it ought to be. I'll yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Campbell, you You lied to Senator Grassley, didn't you?
No, Senator.
You told Senator Grassley that you've never represented workers' dignity, didn't you?
That is correct, Senator.
That's not true, is it?
Senator, I have never represented that organization.
Yes, ma'am. That's not true, is it?
Senator, it is true. I served for a period of 2 or 3 years, more than a decade ago, on an advisory board to help them set up as a nonprofit.
In fact, you were so supportive of workers' dignity that not only did you represent them, you didn't charge them a fee. Isn't that correct?
Senator, when I was on their advisory board more than a decade ago, I did volunteer my time.
Right. You know what this is? Do you recognize that picture?
No, Senator.
This is from Workers' Dignity's website. There you are, right here. It's got your name. Wow. Judge Lopez, you have more sympathy for the criminal than the victim, don't you?
Senator, I worked on behalf of victims of crime zealously as a prosecutor. As a judge, I listened carefully to understand impact on victims, and I have always take that into account.
Do you know Micah Smith?
Michael Smith, Senator?
Micah, M-I-C-H.
I don't believe I know a Micah Smith, Senator, no.
Okay. I bet the victims of Micah Smith remember Micah Smith if you don't.
Senator, there was a defendant I sentenced named Michael Smith.
Mr. Smith molested a 4-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, he was convicted after trial of unlawful sexual contact under Maine law.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That was the charge, Senator.
Right. Mr. Smith molested a 9-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, again, he was convicted of unlawful sexual contact against 2 children. In that case, I did impose the sentence the state requested.
At oral argument, this is how Mr. Smith's conduct was described. Quote, you heard this testimony. All of the abuse is done in the same fashion. Smith would rub his fingers in a circular motion on the vagina of each child, and he did so repeatedly. Now, where I come from, we call that sexual abuse. You can pretty it up all you want to, Judge. This is what you said at Mr. Micah's sentencing. These are your words, not mine. What I can say, you said, is that this is a very tragic situation of a person who has a lot of good in him. A lot of good in him. Having done a very reprehensible thing to 2 young children, causing extreme damage. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, in that case, I imposed the sentence the state requested.
Did I read that, your quotation, correctly?
Senator, that I think is a portion of what I said at sentencing. My focus was on...
But the words I read, are they correct?
That's what was reported in the paper, Senator. I have not seen a transcript of the sentencing.
I bet the victims remember, Judge. You might have forgotten, just like you forgot his name, but I bet the victims remember. And then you handed down a sentence. You gave Mr. Smith 12 years, but you suspended 6 of them, didn't you?
Senator, that was at the recommendation of the state because
but it was your ruling. Did you? Is that an accurate statement of your ruling?
Senator, I accepted the state's recommendation that 6 years should be suspended so that Mr. Smith would be required to participate in sex offender treatment.
I appreciate the lengthy explanation, but I think it's a pretty simple question. That was your sentence, right?
Yes, I imposed the sentence the state requested in that case.
Are you familiar with the Bangor Daily News?
I am the Bangor Daily News Senator.
Right. Did you read the article they wrote, quote, light sentences send a message that domestic violence does not matter, end quote. You remember that article?
I have read it, Senator. I believe it mischaracterizes a case that is
That
described.
article was about you, wasn't it?
My recollection, Senator, is that it described several different cases. The case that I worked on that was described there, the defendant in that case was acquitted by a jury of the most serious conduct, and that was not reflected in that article. And so
the newspaper got it wrong.
That was an op-ed that I believe misunderstood what happened, which is the jury acquitted the defendant of the most serious conduct that he was charged with. I was not the fact finder in that case, and so at sentencing I was bound by the jury's verdict.
Let me ask you, I'm going to run out of time here. I wish I had more time for you, Ms. Campbell, but I've seen a lot of activist judges, and I'm not saying you're the most activist, but the list you're on, it sure doesn't take long to call the roll. Let me finish with this question. I'm going to end as I began, Judge Lopez. You have more sympathy for criminals than victims, don't you?
Senator, I have the support of the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence and the Maine Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I believe that support is a reflection of the work I did as a prosecutor, as well as the care I take with cases involving victims as a judge.
You're embarrassed to answer my question, aren't you?
Thank you to the nominees for being here. I'm sorry that I was unable to preside, but in the capable hands of my colleague, Peter Welch. Judge Lopez.
Congratulations to our nominees. Ms. Lanthier, your daughter's name is Addison or Allison?
My daughter's name is Allison.
Allison. And Allison's here.
Allison is here. My grandchild, Rona, is also here.
Okay. Allison, would you like to say anything? If you change your mind, just let me know, okay, and I'll stop.
If you say anything, be careful, Senator.
Ms. Henry, let's talk a little law. If I challenge a rule under the Administrative Procedures Act, what do I have to prove?
Thank you for that.
You are welcome.
Question. Senator, in the 25 plus years that I've been trying cases in federal court and in state court, I've never had to bring a claim under the Administrative Procedures Act, so I'm not sure of what's required.
You don't know the answer?
I don't.
Okay. All right, let me ask you this. You'll probably see this in district court. Is partisan gerrymandering legal?
Thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
I think that I think that I would have to evaluate that claim if it were before me, and in doing so, I would look at what's involved in.
But is it legal,
Senator? I don't. I have not had that issue before me in my years.
Do you know what
practice.
it is?
I do understand. What I understand is that is when the districts are separated, voting districts, based on different political groups.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Is it legal or illegal?
Senator, I haven't had that issue before me in my 30 years of practice.
You don't know?
So, but if I'm faced with that issue, I would research it and I'd be prepared to address it.
Okay. All right. Do you know what a blue law is?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Do you know what a blue law is?
A blue law is...
Studied that in law school, I'm sure.
I believe a blue law, Senator, is having to do with selling alcohol on certain days.
Yeah, like usually on Sunday.
Like, yes, Senator.
Yeah. Does that violate the Establishment Clause? Does a blue law... me be more precise, I'm sorry. Does the blue law violate the Establishment Clause?
Senator, I don't believe a blue law does violate the Establishment Clause.
Okay, why not?
Well, because, Senator...
If a legislature says you can't open and sell, let's say, food or anything on Sunday, not Thursday, not Saturday, Sunday, why doesn't that violate the Establishment Clause?
Senator, I think there was an issue in a recent Supreme Court case that talked about whether they could force, it was a postal worker, to have to work on Sundays because that violated his religious beliefs to have to work on Sundays. And what the
that wasn't under the blue law.
Oh no, I was just yes, I understand that. I understand that was an issue though related to the Establishment Clause, which I thought was what we were talking about.
But I'm asking just a real precise question. I'm going to move on if you don't know.
Okay.
Tell me why, just succinctly, like you were back in law school.
Okay.
Why a blue law violates or doesn't violate the Establishment Clause? It seems obvious.
Well, the issue is whether, in looking at the Establishment Clause, of whether the action of the state in saying that you can't be open on a Sunday would would either interfere with the free exercise of the persons, or it would be the government establishing a religion.
Yeah, I understand the issue.
Okay. So
what's the answer?
So the answer is that I believe that there's case law on the fact that there can be blue laws that allow alcohol stores or places that sell alcohol to not be open on Sundays.
Okay. Tell me the difference between proximate cause and cause in fact.
Thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
So my understanding of proximate cause is something that's or directly caused by something is cause in fact, and if it's inadvertent, I believe it would be proximate cause. But as I said, in my 30 years of practicing criminal law, that type of causation is not the type that we usually address. It's usually whether something's intentional, and that's most relevant to our criminal practice.
I don't understand what you just said.
I'm saying when you talk about...
Try it again.
Okay.
What's the difference between proximate cause and cause in fact?
My understanding of it, Senator, and because it has not come up in my 30 years of criminal practice, is that we look to whether something was directly caused or inadvertently caused, and that would be the idea of the difference between the two levels of causation. And I was only saying that in my criminal practice, when we look at whether something is caused, we look at the intent of a statute or of someone's action.
Intent has nothing to do with it.
I know, I understand that. I was just simply, I was explaining
in
the
a
difference
civil case.
Yes, I understand that.
That's criminal.
Yes, correct.
All right. Tell me about the consumer welfare standard.
The Senator's time is close to expiring.
How much time do I have left, Mr. Chairman? It's just you and me. We're down to the big guns here. Can you just tell me about the consumer welfare standard real fast?
Senator, in my 30 years of practice, I've never, in numerous jury trials, I've never encountered the consumer welfare standard. Is that what you said, John?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know.
You don't know what it is?
No, but I came across that case.
You'd look it up.
I sure would.
Okay, you're going to be doing a lot of looking up, it sounds to me like. All right, Allison, did you change your mind? Anything you want to say? You sure?
I'm good.
Okay, how about vote for your mom?
Yeah, do that.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I like that last question, Senator from Louisiana. Senator's time has expired. Thank you. Just one question for each of you. One of the wonderful things I think each of you brings to this is that you're...
Thank you, Senator Butler. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Wise, you're not being honest with us, are you?
That is incorrect.
Well, we all may be poorer under President Biden, but we're not stupid. We have a long list of your articles and your opinions and your political statements. On March 8, 2017, you wrote an article for Time magazine while you were a sitting judge. It's entitled Judge, Gender Laws Are at Odds with Science. I'm going to quote your words. When legislators blur the lines of church and state and enact laws that permit or prohibit conduct based on biological gender as only male or female, they place an impossible burden on the judiciary. End quote. Did I read that accurately?
I do not know because I don't have the article in front of me.
Well, I do. You also said in that article, quote, your words, not mine, sex has countless natural permutations, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
I believe that is consistent with medical science and under the Daubert standard, the science that comes in as expert testimony in trials.
On October 13, 2020, while you were serving as a state judge, you wrote an article for The Atlantic entitled, quote, your words, not mine, America's judiciary doesn't look like America. And you criticized this committee and President Trump for his judicial nominees. You said, quote, these are your words, not mine. The judiciary crafted over the past 4 years does not look like America. Not one of these judges is black, and more than 90% were raised or currently identify as Christians. I don't know how you knew that. And then you say, quote, your words, not mine. Identity is the lens that filters everything and everyone we encounter. End quote. Did I read that correctly?
Again, I don't know because I don't have the article in front of me.
I do. I got it right here. You wrote another article on July 31, 2020 for the San Francisco Daily Journal, in which you advocate for the right of sitting judges to be able to go to protests, didn't you?
That is incorrect.
No, it's not. I'm looking at it right here. This is what you say. No judge should be ethical. Your words, not mine. You just said you didn't say them. You turned these articles over. No judge should be ethically constrained from speaking or taking action that reinforces that constitutional and moral imperative. May judges participate in demonstrations that denounce racism, support equal justice, and reinforce our constitutional rights to free speech and peaceable assembly? Yes. End quote. Did I read that correctly?
I don't know because I don't have the article in front of me.
If you're a federal judge, are you going to go to protests?
I would like to answer the substance of the underlying question that was asked.
I'd like you to answer my question. I've only got another minute or so. If you're a federal, let me put it another way. Have you ever gone to a protest, a public protest, while you're a sitting judge?
Senator Kennedy, the article that you are referring to
Have you ever gone
written...
to a protest while you're a sitting judge?
I do not believe that I have ever attended a protest as a sitting judge, or perhaps ever in my life.
Uh-huh. And you talk about Girls, Inc. You say you've never heard of them. You were on the, or you don't know that much about them. You were on the board from 2014 to 2024. You're still on their board, aren't you?
I'm not. My term expired this last month.
And you've given them over $50,000, haven't you?
I do not believe that is correct.
That's what your report says. And this is the This is the same Girls Inc. that says, quote, on its website, here's how they define girls. Quote, girls refers to gender expansive youth, cis girls, trans girls, non-binary youth, gender and non-conforming youth, genderqueer youth, and any girl-identified youth. Did I read that correctly?
I don't know. I've never heard of that policy or that definition
Right.
from
Never heard
Girls
of
Inc.
it. Listen, in spite of your, can I just have 30 more seconds? In spite of your strongly held political beliefs, and we've got all of them, all your articles, they're as long as King Kong's are you telling us today, do you believe that you will not allow your strongly held political beliefs to influence your judicial opinions? Do you believe that?
The best evidence of the type of federal judge I will be,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
type of
Do you
judge,
believe that? Do you believe that?
is the type of judge I have been for 10 years, who is one who always puts the law above my personal
Do you
views.
also believe in Bigfoot? Do you believe in the tooth fairy?
Your time has expired, Senator.
Do you believe Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Park. Would you lie to this committee to get confirmed?
No, Senator.
You just did, didn't you?
I don't believe so, yeah.
I've spent a lot of time studying your record. You're a bright young man. You're an activist, aren't you?
Senator, I don't think that's a fair description of my record.
Okay. You have a history of substituting your judgment for your client's interests. My impression of your record, and I've studied it carefully, is that when you think you're smarter and more virtuous than your client or the law, you substitute your own judgment. And that's a dangerous thing to do if you're a federal judge. It's a dangerous thing that you have done as a Solicitor General. Berger v. North Carolina, State Conference of the NAACP. The North Carolina legislature, elected by the people, passed a voter ID law. NAACP, as is its right, filed suit to challenge it. You were supposed to represent the people of North Carolina in the legislature. You dumped on the case, didn't you? You purposely tried to lose, didn't you?
Senator, not at all.
Well, your opponents, NAACP, filed a multitude of affidavits and expert opinions. You declined to offer a single expert witness affidavit, didn't you?
Well, Senator, let me clarify. I had no role in the trial proceedings. I'm an appellate lawyer.
Did you and your office decline to file any affidavits whatsoever?
I don't recall, Senator. I believe that is accurate, but again, I was not involved in the case at the time.
I checked. You didn't. The district court ruled for the NAACP. You didn't seek an injunction or a stay, did you?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
I know it's correct. You dumped on the case.
Senator, I don't think that's a fair characterization of what happened.
I do, and I think the facts bear it out. So then you take it up on appeal. In fact, the leadership in the legislature, because you dumped on the case, they tried to intervene. Said, our lawyer is not representing us, for God's sakes. They tried to intervene. The judge said no. So the case goes up on appeal to the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit reverses the district court, even though you and your colleagues tried to lose the case, and you did. It goes up to the Court of Appeal. Court of Appeal and the Fourth Circuit rules in favor of the state. You're representing the state. You tried to appeal the decision that was in your client's favor, didn't you?
Do you mean the intervention dispute, Senator?
No. You tried to reverse the Fourth Circuit that ruled in your client's favor.
Senator, that is not accurate.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You filed a petition for an en-banc review to overrule the panel opinion.
Senator, that's actually inaccurate. That's the intervention dispute. My office, there were 2 parallel appeals, and on the merits of the appeal, which we did appeal the non-entry of a preliminary injunction, and we prevailed on that appeal, working with the legislative defendants in that case.
Okay. School funding case. You were supposed to, you and your colleagues were supposed to represent the state in that case. Low-income school districts, as happens in most states, sued the state to force the Republican legislature to increase their funding. You're supposed to represent the state. You and your clients dumped on your client. You and your colleagues dumped on your client again, didn't you?
Senator, as Solicitor General Brasher told this committee a few years ago, the Solicitor General does not make those decisions.
Right. This is what you and your boss said. And it's your boss's words, but I didn't see you objecting. He said, today, quote, I'm going to quote, today, lawyers from my office are arguing that we must invest more money in our public schools so our students can get sound, basic public education. Y'all dumped on your client. You did the same thing. You refused to represent the state of North Carolina in defending the law with respect to abortion, too, didn't you?
Senator, I had no role.
You knew nothing about it.
Well, I was aware of it happening,
Right.
Okay. Senator, the Attorney General.
Look, you're a smart young man. My esteemed chairman's going to cut me off, but you can't. I know you're smart, and I know you think you're more virtuous than other people. But that's a dangerous trait when you're a federal judge. I just don't think you're mature enough to be a federal judge. I don't think you'll follow the law. I think you'll try to bend the law to what you think is right. And that undermines our federal judiciary. And I don't think you've been candid with this committee. You know that, and I know that. And your record knows that.
Do you want to complete your answer to any of those questions?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. On the voter ID dispute, I think that's a helpful illustration. I had no role in the trial court proceedings. I don't even believe I was updated as the litigation in the trial court was happening. But when we had an adverse order, my role was to play a part in authorizing the appeal. I did authorize the appeal, and lawyers in my office prevailed in vacating the injunction against the voter ID law that had been entered by the district court. There was a side dispute on intervention as to whether the legislative leaders should have been allowed to intervene. I think 2 points there. We never opposed their right to intervene. I told the Supreme Court that in a brief that I signed, that we do not oppose their right to intervene. And we also said in a brief that I worked on and authored large parts of, I substantively defended the voter ID law. I explained that the voter ID law was compliant with Supreme Court precedent and that we were prepared to defend it below and that we would do so. And I remember drafting this part of the brief, extensive argumentation about why the voter ID law in North Carolina was constitutional.
Mr. Chairman, Can I respond? Please?
Sure, go ahead. Take 30 seconds.
I will. Look, Counselor, those are pretty words, but I'm going to tell you something. I've studied your record. And if I hired you as a lawyer, and you did to me what you did to your client, the people of North Carolina, I'd have brought you to the Bar Association. I'd have filed a complaint against you for violations of the Code of Ethics.
Now recognize Senator Ossoff, and I apologize for favoring Senator Butler as usual. You should have been Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Wildheimer, am I saying your name right?
You are. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Who is Brian Labus, L-A-B-U-S? Is that name ring a
Brian
bell?
Labus, if I am remembering,
Labus.
if I am remembering correctly, since I had 2 years in criminal, about 2,000 cases assigned to me, I believe he was the first human trafficker case we had in Montgomery County. Am I remembering that correctly, Senator?
Well, he was 25 years old. He was a nursing assistant.
Oh, that's a different case. I do recall that one. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
nursing home. He sexually assaulted one of the patients. She had Alzheimer's. Do you remember how old she was?
I do not remember, but I do know she needed to be in a nursing home and was incapacitated.
She was 93 years old. He's 25. He gets her alone. She's got Alzheimer's, and he molests her. This meathead made bail, and because he's like a rock, only dumber, he immediately goes out and drives while smoking dope. He gets arrested. And he came before you for sentencing. Do you remember what sentence you gave him?
I do, and my recollection of the facts is slightly different. My recollection is his DUI arrest was after my sentencing, but regardless, you are correct, he had the DUI. This was a negotiated sentence in this case.
What sentence did you give him?
I do not recall the terms of the negotiation. I do remember it was a negotiated sentence, and I do have...
You gave him 11 months and 15 days, didn't you, for assaulting this woman?
If that is what your records show, I have no reason to disagree with that.
And he grinned, according to the news reports. Grinned at you. You remember that?
I do not recall that. I do have recollections of this case, and if I may, Senator, it is a case in which the Commonwealth had...
Yes, ma'am, but I've got to... I don't want you to take all my time telling me about the case, because I haven't looked at the case. For the DUI, after this meathead assaults a 93-year-old Alzheimer's patient, you gave him 11 months and 15 days. For the DUI case, you gave him 3 days to 6 months.
Senator, the DUI was not in front of me. I was out of the criminal division by then, and I believe that went to a judge that took my cases when I was transferred to the civil division.
Ms. Perry, tell me the difference between res judicata and collateral estoppel.
Collateral estoppel is also known as issue preclusion. Res judicata is also known as claim preclusion. In issue preclusion, the question is whether the parties have previously litigated to their merits and finality the same issue, in which case they would not be allowed to relitigate the issue. In claim preclusion, the question is similar, whether the parties have litigated to finality on the merits claims, and they would not be allowed to relitigate those.
Okay. Tell me the legal meaning of present sense impression.
Present sense impression is an exception to the hearsay rule. And in present sense exception cases, it's the general idea behind the exception is that a person is unlikely to lie if they are simply giving their present recollection of exactly what is occurring as it is occurring. And therefore, those statements are allowed to be used in evidence, even though they are, by definition, hearsay.
Very good. Tell me, what is, we all pay taxes on income. I know you do because the FBI checked. They do a thorough background check. And I do too. What is income?
Well, the IRS regulations are extremely complex when it comes
conceptually,
to
what is income?
describing income, but basically it is anything of value that you receive throughout the year. So it could be gratuities, it could be wages.
Well, what if I'm asking you how you go about analyzing this. Let's suppose Senator Durbin starts a new company and he takes it public, and I decide to buy some stock because I believe in Dick Durbin, and I buy it at 10, and it goes to 20, and I'm feeling all warm and toasty, but I don't sell it. I want to just because I think it's going to go to 30 because I believe in Senator Durbin. Can government tax me even though I haven't sold it?
I am by no means a tax expert, and I would like no one to rely upon this tax advice. My understanding is that would be an unrealized capital gain, and you would be taxed upon it at the time that it is realized. But again, I am not a tax law expert.
Why is that? I mean, what's the basis for that?
Why am I not a tax law expert?
What's the basis for that?
I believe the basis for that is that those are somewhat imaginary gains that can rise or fall as the market rises or falls, and so they tax you upon it at the time that you actually realize that interest.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm sorry I'm out of time. I didn't get to ask you questions, but good luck to you.
Thank you, Senator. Judge Weilheimer, do you want to explain the sentencing in that case?
Thank you, Senator. When we have cases in which there is a guilty plea, in a case like the Labus case, which I do have a specific recollection of, I would often ask for a sidebar and ask for a justification for me accepting the negotiated guilty plea. There have been times that I have rejected negotiated guilty pleas. In that case, there were evidentiary insufficiencies on behalf of the Commonwealth. And when that occurs, it is important for me to make sure that the crime is recognized, and the effect on the victim is recognized, even if it might not be to the same extent as if someone would have been found guilty after a jury and the sentencing would have been exclusively up to me. This at least brings closure to the victim's family, and it brings closure, a recognition of the crime. And for that reason, in this case, I accepted the negotiated guilty plea.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the members of the panel. Quick logistic.
Ms. Perry, tell me the difference between res judicata and collateral estoppel.
Collateral estoppel is also known as issue preclusion. Res judicata is also known as claim preclusion. In issue preclusion, the question is whether the parties have previously litigated to their merits and finality the same issue, in which case they would not be allowed to relitigate the issue. In claim preclusion, the question is similar, whether the parties have litigated to finality on the merits claims, and they would not be allowed to relitigate those.
Okay. Tell me the legal meaning of present sense impression.
Present sense impression is an exception to the hearsay rule. And in present sense exception cases, it's the general idea behind the exception is that a person is unlikely to lie if they are simply giving their present recollection of exactly what is occurring as it is occurring. And therefore, those statements are allowed to be used in evidence, even though they are, by definition, hearsay.
Very good. Tell me, what is, we all pay taxes on income. I know you do because the FBI checked. They do a thorough background check. And I do too. What is income?
Well, the IRS regulations are extremely complex when it comes to
what is income?
Describing income, but basically it is anything of value that you receive throughout the year. So it could be gratuities, it could be wages.
Well, what if I'm asking you how you go about analyzing this. Let's suppose Senator Durbin starts a new company and he takes it public, and I decide to buy some stock because I believe in Dick Durbin, and I buy it at 10, and it goes to 20, and I'm I'm feeling all warm and toasty. But I don't sell it. I want to just, because I think it's going to go to 30, because I believe in Senator Durbin. Can government tax me even though I haven't sold it?
I am by no means a tax expert, and I would like no one to rely upon this tax advice. My understanding is that would be an unrealized capital gain, and you would be taxed upon it at the time that it is realized. But again, I am not a tax law expert.
Why is that? I mean, what's the basis for that?
Why am I not a tax law expert?
What's the basis for that?
I believe the basis for that is that those are somewhat imaginary gains that can rise or fall as the market rises or falls, and so they tax you upon it at the time that you actually realize that interest.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm sorry I'm out of time. I didn't get to ask you questions, but good luck to you.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to each of you. Judge Bendisi, I want to just talk to you about the law. I'm not interested in what you believe. I'm interested in how you think. I want to start with reapportionment law. Can a state legislature draw election lines in an obviously, blatantly political way to favor one party over another?
Good morning, Senator Kennedy. My understanding of the law is that issues such as partisan gerrymandering are considered political questions.
Yes, sir, but can you answer my question first, if you don't mind? Because I've got 6 folks here in 5 minutes. Can a state legislature do that?
Senator, under the justiciability issue of political question, I believe the Supreme Court has held that those issues are political and not something that the court can review.
So is that a yes or no?
Senator, if they're drawing them for political reasons, as you put, and not for discriminatory purposes in any means, then I believe under Supreme Court precedent that would be a political question.
Okay. Is that a yes or no?
I think it's a yes under your scenario there. Again, Senator, I'd have to review the facts of the case and hear more about the reasons behind the lines that were drawn.
Tell me about the political question. I'm sorry. We were just talking about political questions. Tell me about the government speech doctrine. You'll see that a lot in federal court. Tell me about the government speech doctrine.
Are you referring to under First Amendment, Senator?
Yes.
So my understanding under the First Amendment that there are particular forms of speech that, depending on if it's content-based speech or content-neutral
yes,
speech.
so that's on the private side. I'm talking about the public side. Do you know what the government speech doctrine is?
Senator, my 20-plus years practicing civil litigation and 2.5 years on the bench, I have not had the opportunity to hear or litigate any matters involving that doctrine, but certainly if it comes before me, I would thoroughly research it.
Well, you're going to have to bone up on it because you're going to see a lot of it. Let me put it another way. Does government have free speech rights?
Does the government have free speech rights?
Yeah,
well,
we know you and I do, but does government itself have a right to free speech?
Senator, I would have to understand more of the facts of a particular challenge.
It's very simple. I'm not talking about individuals. We know that the government, state or federal or local, has to be very, very careful in restricting our right to free speech. I'm asking you about government. Does government have the right to free speech?
Are you referring to just an individual who serves in government?
No, I'm talking about somebody speaking for a government. If a governor stands up and says, I'm speaking for the state of New York, does government have the right to free speech? Yes or no, if you would?
Senator, Again, in my 20 years of litigating civil litigation matters and 2.5 years on the bench, I haven't had specifically a case on that.
I know,
particular
but have
matter.
you thought about it? I mean, there's a whole body of case law out there, my gosh. Did you study that in law school, Judge?
I'm sure I did, Senator.
Okay. Well, let me put it another way. If Senator Lee designs a special license plate that he wants to give people the right to purchase and put on their cars in Utah, and the government says no, and Senator Lee says, but let these other folks design their own license plates, and the government of Utah says no. Can the government of Utah do that?
Well, if the government is restricting certain kind of speech, content-based speech, it would have to undergo a strict scrutiny analysis.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. That came up in Texas. That's what the government speech doctrine is. Somebody in Texas said, I want to put a Confederate flag on a license plate. And Texas said, nope. And he sued, said just what you said, very famous Supreme Court case. And the Supreme Court said, government speech, government can do that. Do you know what well, strike that. Let's suppose there's a park, and that park has monuments in it. And Senator Lee says, I want to put my monument in that park too. I see all these others you let put in there. And government says no. Who wins? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I would have to review more facts of the case to determine.
You don't know who would win that?
Senator, I'd have to see more details from the case to determine the facts behind it to make a proper ruling on that type of a case.
Wow. Okay.